So okay guys, today I thought I would talk about my Voxlab Proxima 6 3D printer. Now with that said, I should state this isn't your typical standard normal FDM type of 3D printer, this is in fact a Resin 3D printer. Now what that means is it's entirely different from your traditional styled FDM printers. It mostly prints upside down and using a liquid. So with that said, it's an entirely different beast and it's something I've been wanting to do for a really long time. So when my birthday pulled around, I decided to just pull the trigger. I picked it up for about $185 and they give you a kilogram of resin to go with it. Overall, the box looked pretty beat up and damaged, but the printer itself was just fine. Now the little touch display on the front was pushed in, but I was able to get that back out. But overall, for a budget printer, I can't really complain. However, what I can complain about is they put all the software on the USB stick, so the first thing I would recommend you to do if you pick up this kind of printer is to back those files up. Now trust me, I learned the hard way. I didn't back it up, which means I had to go in, measure the screen on my printer using a caliper, and I had to go into Chitubox and put those new values in there. Now that's something they don't tell you when you get a printer like this. You think you can print the full screen resolution out. Well, that's typically not true. The screen itself is taped in, so on the edges you lose some build volume. So you will want to invest in a decent caliper, especially if you might accidentally lose these files where they come pre-set up within Chitubox. Another thing to note, the Proxima 6 ships with two different motherboard revisions. I got the newer one, which means I do need to have a modified version of Chitubox in order for me to actually slice out files that my printer can read. Now unlike the typical .fdg format, this takes a .svgx format. What this means is if you download Chitubox, you're going to need to manually edit the configuration file for this printer and add in the Svgx extension. I'll have a quick text-based guide on screen and in the description for those of you that need to do this. But once you have it set up right, when you go to export from Chitubox to, well, the printer itself, your file formats should export correctly. Now besides those two things that I've already mentioned, the file formats and having to measure the screen out, the printer itself has been overall fine. Now all it took was some calibration tests just to get some fine tuning in, but you have to do that with pretty much any printer anyway, so once I've got that all done and set up, printing files is as simple as printing a file on my FDM printer, albeit just a little bit more messy. Anyway, as you can see on screen right now, this is my current setup. I got a pan which I typically have mounted magnetically to the side of this old computer monitor that I have next to the printer. Once that pan's all cured, I stick it up there and I usually just chisel out the plastic as it hardens into the trash bin. Although this method hasn't been working out very great lately, so I may just switch to a silicone kind of pan or something to dump my prints off the build plate onto. Other than that, I got some cheap reusable gloves. You're supposed to use nitrile non-reusable gloves, however these are rated as nitrile class, meaning I can use them on my resin printer just fine. Now I do recommend at least getting some paper towels ready, because after you grab out your prints with these gloves, you will want to dry the gloves off before storing them away. I really do recommend getting reusable gloves, although I know many in the community will say not to do that. Just as long as they're nitrile rated, you will be fine though. There's another thing to note about this type of printer. Do not wash anything down the sink, don't flush anything. Usually you want to take any kind of liquid that may be left over, put it in the sun or under a UV lamp, and then you can dispose of it like you would normal plastic. Which brings me on to the liquids. What containers am I using and what kind of solutions am I using to clean my prints? I use a mix of IPA sometimes, however I've been switching to just using some simple water and then dumping my prints within a bath of acetone. Now you gotta be careful with acetone, you don't want your prints to sit in there for long, but after you wash your prints in water and dish soap, I have a bucket separate for this. I put them in the bucket of acetone, which takes it all off, and usually any soap left on will dissolve away, and that lets me know that I got pretty much the part thoroughly cleaned. Now if you're wondering what I do with the liquids when I'm done with it or when they get too cloudy or unusable, I pretty much just put them in the sun, let it all evaporate away, and then I'll take the leftover bits of plastic, either dump them out or just scrape it out and then reuse the bins. Now I don't really consider myself a messy person when using the resin printer, however I did just pick up a pan to put underneath my printer just in case the FEP sheet ever broke. I don't really know what kind of a mess this would make if that sheet ever broke while you're printing, and I just wanted to have something there to catch any accidental spills, so I do recommend getting yourself a nice big cooking pan and putting the printer on top of that. Another thing I recommend is when you go to level this printer, use the flint reed method. I didn't know I was doing this at first, but apparently that's the name of the method I've been doing the whole time by accident. I guess I've been doing it instinctively. However, when you want to level this printer, use the flint reed method. It is the best method by far to level this type of machine, I found out. Another thing to note is within the documentation in the books, as well as the videos online, you're supposed to only turn 2 screws to loosen the build plate to level it. However, what I've discovered is that's completely wrong. There is now a 3rd screw in the back. You gotta loosen this one all the way. Then you can tighten it after if you wish to, help stabilize it a little bit more. But there is a 3rd screw, and you either gotta unloosen that all the way like I said, or loosen it then retighten it once you get it to a position you like. But that screw needs to be turned or you're not going to be able to level this bed at all from what I found out. Now another thing I do recommend is getting some lubricant for the FEP sheet. I'm just using some cheap like $1 dollar store lubrication stuff, although I recommend getting the actual usable stuff, PTFE spray, just because this printer, when printing larger objects, they tend to get suctioned onto the FEP a little too well in my opinion, and this is even when angling the objects as you're supposed to. But what I found is if I spray a little bit of this on there and then print, usually things work out pretty good. So the spray I think is necessary when using this cheaper style of 3D printer. But overall guys, that's pretty much it for this video. I'm sorry I couldn't get any cool, really neat time lapses of this machine printing. I didn't really print anything too tall yet to do that, and I don't really have a camera switch made yet for my DSLR to capture that sort of thing. Although in the future I may design something like that, just to trick my camera into taking a picture every 3 seconds after the light turns on the printer itself. So if you're looking forward to that, I'll hopefully have that done soon and something like a prototype made. One more thing before I go, you guys are probably also wondering how loud this machine is. Is it any louder than the FDM printer? Well, they honestly sound about the same in my opinion, although if I had to rate the quietness of each, the resin printer is definitely quieter, although don't expect it to be whisper quiet. Now if it's in another room while you're printing, you most likely won't hear it though. But yeah guys, like I said though, that's pretty much it for this video, and I'm gonna leave it off here now. DTPK is signing off. Peace. Creed-styled hidden blades with nothing more than my 3D printer and a couple of screws. Or perhaps even this, using nothing more than a free program called EB Synth.